Hey guys, Sean here and welcome to the F1 Word. Now, the F1 driver market has been the most unpredictable it's been for years and seats are clearly at a bit of a premium. So, who needs to step up and which drivers are now under big pressure to perform if they want to keep their F1 drives for 2019? Well, I think the first and perhaps most obvious one is Stoffel Van Doorn. The Belgian has had a very difficult season so far, and that has led to a lot of speculation over whether or not he deserves another year in F1. And especially when you consider some of the talent and the rising stars within McLaren's own driver programme that could well be available. The Belgian has picked up just 8 of McLaren's 52 points this season and has struggled for form really since the Spanish Grand Prix. But his start to 2018 wasn't even that bad. 3 points finishes from the opening 4 rounds was actually pretty solid. The problem for me with Van Doorn is that he's being compared, perhaps unfairly, to Fernando Alonso, a guy with 17 years experience and 2 world championships. I mean, yeah, he is a long way off in terms of points, but a couple of occasions aside, he is regularly within 2 or 3 tenths of the Spaniard over the course of one lap, and that isn't as bad as people are making it out to be. Thinking about it, Alonso has got to be worth at least a tenth or 2 per lap, surely. And okay, I will admit and I'll accept that I have been harsh on Stoffel, but only because I expected so much more given his incredibly impressive form in the junior categories prior to F1. And he wasn't bad at all last season either, given the car that he had. I do still really rate him, but it can't be ignored that he needs to be stepping up and quickly. He's got Lando Norris breathing down his neck, and there is a lot of talk that Esteban Ocon could perhaps be available for next season, and even that he's an option that the team are considering. But despite his struggles, McLaren have continually defended Van Doorn throughout this season and have insisted that they are not disappointed with how he's done overall in 2018. And they've even gone as far as to say that they've not given him a particularly good car this year. But even the team that have defended him so much are now starting to push for him to be beating Fernando Alonso more often. But again though, is it really Fernando they should be comparing him to? He has struggled against others on the grid, but he's also beating a fair few of those around him. This weekend is his home Grand Prix, of course, and that represents a real opportunity for him. He'll be fresh from the summer break. You know, he's got the home crowd behind him. And if he can deliver an absolutely flawless weekend, and perhaps even put some pressure on Fernando Alonso, he could use it as a platform to start to turn his season around. But when you consider how much movement there is in the driver market, you would have to say that time is really starting to run out for Stoffel. For me personally, I really do hope that he keeps his seat for 2019 and that he gets that chance to prove himself against Carlos Sainz. Next up has to be Brendon Hartley. He really hasn't been great this year and has been making far too many mistakes. The Kiwi is also being comprehensively beaten by Pierre Gasly, again in terms of points, but also on performance. He hasn't even had the qualifying pace to fall back on like, say, Van Doorn has had. And I do keep going on about qualifying pace, but at the end of the day, that is the best way to measure how close a driver is to their teammate. You know, 1 lap, fastest tyre, low fuel, fastest engine modes. It's a level playing field, and he's not really that close. In fact, he has been well off the pace of the Frenchman. Looking at the other side, and in fairness to him, he has had his fair share of bad luck this year, and reliability has definitely gone against him. But he has retired from the same number of races as his teammate, who sits a huge 24 points ahead of him. Even if you remove Gasly's stunning driving result in Bahrain for whatever reason, the gap only halves, and a 12-point lead is massive in terms of the midfield or back end of the grid fight. And let's look back and be completely frank with this. Red Bull won't generally tolerate that from drivers, as we've seen in the past. Their expectations are very high and they can be fairly ruthless when it comes to swinging the axe. However, all of that aside and despite his poor season, he could well be safe given Daniel Ricciardo's decision to head to Renault for next year and of course Pierre Gasly heading to Red Bull. As I've said before, are there really enough options out there for Toro Rosso to be able to change 2 drivers in the team? So with that in mind, he could well still be driving in Formula 1 next year, whatever happens between now and the end of the season. But ignoring all of that, he's another driver who really needs to start delivering, and that needs to start this weekend in Belgium. As is the case with Van Doorn, you know, one great weekend isn't necessarily going to save his season, but with back-to-back races before the flyaways, it's a great opportunity to try and build some momentum ahead of the final races of the year. Now, Romain Grosjean, this is a tough one because although the first few races of the season were very poor from the Frenchman, 3 of the last 4 races have been very good for him, very solid. And it could well be that he is already stepping up in a bid to save his seat and potentially his F1 career. Again, he's another guy who's been beaten comfortably by his teammate. Kevin Magnussen has been exceptional this year. And Grosjean is a long way off the Danes' points tally, which, in a car that is now regarded as the 4th fastest, is pretty much unacceptable. Okay, as I said there, Magnussen has been exceptional over the first 12 races, but let's not forget that Grosjean is an experienced guy in F1 and so at the very least should be matching his teammate. And although you could throw bad luck in there for things like Australia, he has also made a lot of big mistakes, most notably the crash in Spain and losing it behind a safety car in Baku. It's not good enough, again, for a guy with his experience. He also went on an 8-race pointless run from the start of the season whilst K-Mag was happily plugging away and delivering some very impressive results and performances. And look, I can go back and slam Roman for his poor form over the start of the season, but as I said a moment ago, I feel like he has already started to turn a corner this year and could be on for a solid second half to the season, and he needs it. There is a lot of talk out there that Charles Leclerc is on for a promotion should Haas choose to make a change for 2019, and it looks more than likely that the team will keep Magnussen on as well. So Grosjean could well be out of a seat, and if he loses it, probably out of F1 as well. But as I've said so many times over the last few weeks, I still feel like keeping Grosjean would be Gunther Steiner's preferred choice. So we shall see. But either way, the Frenchman needs to be pulling his weight, getting closer to his teammate and building on his recent solid form. Right then, this one will surprise a lot of people and I need to mention him briefly. But before you jump on me for it, please do just hear me out. And that's Esteban Ocon. He has been solid and consistent all year to this point. And despite the fact that Sergio Perez delivered a podium in Baku, the Frenchman is only 1 point behind the Mexican. He has once again impressed and is showing why he is so highly rated by Mercedes and others. So why is he on this list of under pressure drivers if he's been that good? Well, frankly, he has a whole different kind of pressure on his shoulders at the moment compared to those I've already mentioned. Whilst they need to be finding form and stepping up, Ocon has got to keep delivering on his season so far, as he could well, despite being impressive this year, find himself without a seat. It looks as though it will be Perez and Stroll at Force India for 2019 at the very latest, with other seats and options beginning to close off quickly. In fact, you could say that there are perhaps only 2 options out there for him, McLaren and Williams. And some would throw Toro Rosso in there too, but I'm not entirely convinced on that. Esteban is in the unfortunate position of not being able to make too many, if any, mistakes between now and the end of the season. So no, absolutely, he does not need to be stepping up. He's been very good this year, but he is under pressure to continue impressing and grab the attention of some of the teams with open seats. And he's another one, like Van Doorn, who I really hope is in F1 next year. Very quickly though, in terms of some other drivers, well, I would have thrown Carlos Sainz in there 2 weeks ago, as he has been well beaten by Nico Hülkenberg, and for me, he's been really disappointing this year. But he has a seat confirmed for next year, so I guess there is no real pressure on him. But I still think he needs to step up and deliver for the rest of this season, even if it's just to show what he can do and head into 2019 on a bit more of a high. I've also seen a lot of talk about how Sergey Sirotkin has been poor this year, and so I could put him on the list. But 1, I just can't give the Williams boys too much stick. They are doing all they can in what is quite frankly an awful car. And 2, it's simply not true. To be fair to him, he is beating Lance Stroll in the qualifying battle, and 1 or 2 instances aside, he has been close to the Canadian when he's been out-qualified. And alright, as a lot of people might say, well, that's Lance Stroll. But the Canadian's in his 2nd year in the sport, and Sirotkin's a rookie this year. So, given that, and how poor that car has been this season, he's actually been alright, and I think the criticism is really unfair. Does that mean Lance Stroll is under pressure then? Well, frankly, no. He will be driving a Force India next year regardless, but I do think it's important, for him more than anything, that he starts beating Sirotkin in qualifying and carrying on with his better race performance versus the Russian. That is it for this one then, and as ever they were just my views and my opinions, but what are yours? Who do you think is under massive pressure this season, and can you see them, or any on this list, turning it around? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I will be back soon with more content as ever, and don't forget to join me live tonight at 8 PM for Tuesday's F1 Daily. In the meantime though, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.